built up energy, packed up action. It's Friday night, and we have a good one for you here tonight. A top 5 competition for the right to the driver's seat in the Big Ten Conference. Hello everyone, I'm Jacob Maurer alongside Brian Rector, live here at Mun Ice Arena for the Big Ten Plus pregame show for this matchup between number 4 Minnesota and number 2 Michigan State. And Brian, we're just about 30 minutes away from puck drop here at Mun Ice Arena. It's not often that we get to do these shows live here at the arena, but you can tell the tension, the energy, the Spartan fans starting to fill in, as well as the Gopher fans who made the trip over to East Lansing. This one's going to be a fun one.
It certainly will, and it's not very often, as you alluded to, that we get moments quite like this. There's a lot to play for tonight. As we're flipping from January into February, it just continues to heat up, and I can't wait to get this thing underway between two teams that truly are titans of the sport.
Yeah, and only 1 point separating Minnesota and Michigan State in the Big Ten standings. Spartans currently in first place, but that may be because of their previous meeting 6 weeks ago. Both these teams squared off in Minneapolis. Michigan State and Minnesota tying the first game 3-3. Michigan State getting the shootout point there. But then in game number 2, Spartans having a 5-3 come from behind victory. Spartans taking 5 out of the 6 points in that weekend. And right now, Brian, that's the difference.
It certainly is. You say 5 of the 6. It's a 1-point differential in this Big Ten Conference. And I am just so excited to continue to see how this thing continues to unfold and how we'll be headed towards the postseason here.
Yeah, and in that matchup against Michigan State and Minnesota, it was a close one. At the time, Minnesota was ranked number 1 in the country. The Spartans were ranked number 3, but after that performance by Michigan State, they took on number 1. But both these teams still sitting in the top 5, looking very, very comfortable. They are two of the best college hockey programs in the country.
And one thing that we have to mention, because it proved to be important in the initial series, you see a look at the shots there, and particularly take a look for me at the number of blocks that we saw between these two schools. Unafraid to give up the body. And I did want to touch, though, Jacob, on the goaltenders. We'll see Erie, and then we'll see another goaltender as well for Minnesota, Soulaire. I'm intrigued to know what happens between both of them and how they are uncovered here in this 2-game series.
Well, it's not what you've done for me, it's what you've done for me lately. That's what they always say. And both these teams were in action last weekend. We'll start with Minnesota. They hosted the Notre Dame Fighting Irish at a dominant 5-2 victory in game number 1. They outshot the Irish 46-15 in game number 1. In game number 2, however, got a little bit closer. Notre Dame taking that to overtime and beating the Gophers in overtime. So Minnesota only getting 4 out of the 6 points in that weekend, something that they wanted back.
Absolutely. And one thing to note is that Jimmy Snugarud was all over this one, as well as Cal Thomas were key goal scorers. For Minnesota in the second game, that was an overtime loss. They had 1 goal in each period. It was a balanced again with the defensemen, Luke Middlestat, as well as Matthew Wood, notching their name into the goal sheet. So I'm excited to see what Minnesota brings out in terms of the offensive weaponry and the cavalry, as some might say, here. And they'll need it against Michigan State.
And they'll be looking for revenge here tonight after their Saturday loss against Notre Dame. They'll be facing off against Michigan State, who was also in action last weekend. They faced off against their in-state rival, the number 10 ranked Michigan Wolverines. That was a home-and-home series. Michigan State started in Ann Arbor in game 1. Spartans lost a close one. They were up 2-1 in the third period, fell 3-2 in overtime, but then brought game number 2 right here at Mun Ice Arena and were dominant in game number 2. But like Minnesota, getting only 4 out of the 6 points on the weekend.
That's right. And I think in game number 1, I looked at Tiernan Schaude, who was awesome in the faceoff circle, 13 wins, 8 losses, and they were able to put up 37 shots, which is just right on that season average. Then in game 2, it was Charlie Stramel who brought it home, as well as Basgul, Van Soggy, and then Stramel again. He has 21 points this year, which are more than his first 2 years of college hockey combined.
And Michigan State, as I mentioned before, they only got 4 out of the 6 points on that weekend, and they were currently number 1 last weekend. They fell a spot, as did Minnesota, and we'll take a look at the USCHO rankings. Both teams, Michigan State last week was number 1, Minnesota last week was number 3. Because of their splits, they fall down a spot, but still remain in that top 5 because all the voters know these are 2 of the best programs in college hockey, and you have to think that a good weekend here at East Lansing for either team would help them boost back up.
Most certainly. That's absolutely right. And what we saw was that Michigan State received quite a few of the first place votes, at 13 of them. Western Michigan, you look at an in-state battle. That's another opportunity where Michigan State and the Western Michigan Broncos were able to face off earlier. But then, Jacob, take a look at 9th and 10th. With Ohio State and Michigan, schools that are just down the road, just to the south, respectively, they're hanging right in there. It's also worth noting that Penn State and Wisconsin received votes in this poll, but did not make the top 20 at this moment in time.
Yeah, and you can see in the top 10, 4 Big Ten teams. That's why it makes it imperative that Michigan State and Minnesota, they stand on the top. That shows that they're just the alpha dogs in this conference. And really, to be 1 and 2 and this slate of teams where any weekend is always a concern. You have to bring your A game to every single game in the Big Ten. I think that's why we like college hockey, and especially Big Ten hockey, and why this matchup is so big here tonight.
Well, and it's also worth noting that quite a few of those top 10 teams are leading the top 10 in terms of overall attendance as well. It makes you wonder, what is it like to be at your home barn as Michigan State is today? And as we continue on, you just understand that these communities in the Northeast, in the Big Ten kind of geographical region, are really coming alive, really caring about their hockey, because as we alluded to a couple days ago, and even earlier in this coverage, that it's not very fun right now to be outside. So let's come inside and enjoy it while we have it.
Yeah, and this week in Michigan, it was so super cold, so why not go inside and continue to watch ice? I think that's why we love this game so much. But you mentioned Munn Ice Arena. I love this arena, and it works well for Michigan State because you can kind of see from behind us that it's a low-hanging roof, which means that the sound just bounces off the roof and goes straight to the ice, which makes it very intimidating for any opponent, and is why Michigan State has had such good success and a big advantage here on Friday night to have it on their home ice.
Most definitely. Another detail to go along with that is that Munn Ice Arena and Michigan State is 5th overall in terms of total attendance and subsequently average attendance. But what I find interesting, Jacob, is that 112% of the average attendance is, the average capacity is totaled with their attendance. So there are about 800 folks in standing room only situation. That will create a big, big advantage.
And you have to wonder how many more will be here tonight, because it's not that often that Michigan State gets a top 5 opponent while they're also in the top 5. And to see that here at Munn Ice Arena, that's pretty rare, especially considering the implications, especially in the Big Ten standings, and also the rankings as well. But this just goes a long way to build each team's resume.
Well, it's been so long since we played for this type of pageantry, right? And this type of implication, as you said. In fact, for Michigan State, it's an opportunity to get off to your best start in how long? 2 decades almost? I just can't believe that we're here, and it's not even February yet.
Well, I don't know if there is a better sport out there here tonight. NBA, NHL, college football is over. NFL doesn't start till Sunday. I think we have the best sports matchup right here on Big Ten Plus, a top 5 matchup to determine who will take control of the Big Ten. Minnesota and Michigan State. More pregame coverage coming your way on Big Ten Plus. Welcome back into the Big Ten Plus pregame show. Jacob Maurer alongside Brian Rector, taking you through about 20 minutes until puck drop between number 4 Minnesota and number 2 Michigan State. And we spent the first part of the pregame show just talking about the implications of this game. There is a lot on the resume, and especially also looking at the win columns. We'll start first with Minnesota. They're looking for win number 20, looking for their best start since the 2020-2021 season, and through those first 19 wins, they've had a lot of impressive victories.
They most certainly have. Take a look at line number 3. Started season 7-2 on the road. That tells me that this is a squad that can go to wherever they have to go when it comes to the postseason and be comfortable there. As well, garnered a sweep against Michigan. And look at that, 16 NHL draft picks on the roster, the most in the NCAA. If Minnesota wants to get to the promised land here this year, they need to rely on that talent.
Yeah, this roster is just loaded for the Gophers, and a big reason why they're on the stepping stone here in the Big Ten Conference. Take a look also, 6-3-1 versus ranked opponents. They're going to need a big one here against a top 5 team against Michigan State, and they have some impressive wins as well. They swept Penn State when they were ranked number 18 in the country. Also had a sweep of, back then, number 6 Michigan, and also a win over ranked Ohio State. They're trying to have their best start since 2020 to 2021, but they'll have a tough foe here tonight. Another team with 19 wins, Michigan State, 19-3-2 on the year, and look at that resume, just as good as Minnesota.
And Trey Augustine, you see there, he's first in save percentage at 93.2. It's worth noting that Augustine took an absence when he was with Team USA in the World Juniors. During that time, it was Luca DiPasco, and it felt like Michigan State didn't even take a single step back. I love that for Michigan State's depth and for their togetherness to continue this thing going. It's always been about depth, next man up, and wow, if you're Coach Adam Nightingale, you have to feel really good about what you have available.
And we talk about Michigan State getting to 19 wins, trying to get number 20 here tonight. It hasn't been easy for Michigan State. They have some really good wins on their resume. They currently beat number 1 ranked Boston College back in that opening weekend. They have a 5 out of the 6 points on the road against, at the time, number 1 Minnesota. They also have a sweep over the ranked Buckeyes here at home, a win over Western Michigan, as we mentioned, and a win over number 10 Michigan. Just last weekend, this Michigan State team has had to go through a lot to get where they're at right now.
They most certainly did, and that's anytime you get to this point during the year, it takes a lot. It takes subverting against adversity. It takes bonding together as a squad. And I believe that both of these schools in Minnesota and Michigan State have done that.
And for Michigan State, they return here to Munn Ice Arena, but their past 12 games, 10 of them have been away from this place, so it has to feel good for Michigan State to be back here at Munn Ice Arena. But I think that's even more impressive on their resume. 19-3-2 on the year, and they just had a big pile of games that were away from their home stadium.
Yeah, and there was even one, folks, that if you had not been tuned in, Michigan State had an opportunity to play outdoor at Wrigley Field in a neutral site venue. That was phenomenal. The Spartans took over Chicago and ended up winning that one in overtime as well. But look at that. When they are at home, 9-1, and the goal differential is just outrageous, plus 24.
And it has to feel good for Michigan State. See that caption, click the skates 3 times, no place like home. Shout out to our producer, Jack Stager, a little Wizard of Oz, a little Wicked reference, because Michigan State has been wicked good at home this season. And we mentioned, out of the 12 games, only 10 of them, their past 12 games, only 10 of them have been away, so only 2 have been here at Munn Ice Arena. It's got to feel good for Michigan State to be back here, especially with numbers like that.
That's right. And honestly, the truth be told is it's really hard to do that, right? Even though you get the jump from being in your home barn, it's not always easy to just keep winning. And I think that's what is phenomenal to me about this Michigan State team that we continue to see is they get behind, they get in trouble, and they find ways to win.
And also, for this home stretch, we mentioned about the attendance, right? Michigan State has sold out 35 out of the 36 home games that they've had, the past 36, and that includes exhibition games. They have East Lansing fired up, and ever since Adam Nightingale got here, he's made this place one heck of a place to watch some college hockey.
Well, it's been a cultural revolution. I truly believe that when this new crop of Michigan State coaches had entered in, the Robin Freilichs in women's basketball, the Jeff Hosslers in women's soccer, and then with Coach Nightingale, it's just flipped on its head that this place is excited and galvanized once more, and I love to see it.
Well, we have some more content coming up next on the Big Ten Plus pregame show. Number 4, Minnesota, and number 2, Michigan State. More content coming up next on Big Ten Plus. Welcome back, everyone, to the Big Ten Plus pregame show. Jacob Maurer alongside Brian Rector, joined now by our sideline reporter, Yusuf Anaya. And Yusuf, you can feel the energy in this place. They know that this game is pretty big, both for Minnesota and both for Michigan State. The winner is in the driver's seat in the Big Ten Conference. Where else would you want to be?
I mean, nowhere else, Jacob. That's the easy answer. You know, each weekend I ask myself internally, can Munn Ice Arena get louder? Can it get more packed? And somehow they find a way to do it. So this fan base is just growing week in and week out, and it's just really exciting to see.
Yeah, and especially the growth of both these two teams. Minnesota off to their best start since 2020 to 2021. Michigan State off to their best start since 2000 to 2001. Me and Brian were talking about how Adam Nightingale really reinvented this Michigan State hockey team. Minnesota, they've always been just a staple in the Big Ten, and these games used to just always go to the Gophers. They had a 16-game winning streak there between those decades, but now that Michigan State is back in the top 5, Minnesota is still playing awesome hockey. It gives us great matchups like this.
Yeah, it's really awesome to see, and one thing I kind of like to attribute to is Minnesota has shrunk their rink in the last couple of years to make some room for some more seats in the arena. And so it goes from that huge Olympic-style size rink to a more normal, conventional style, which most of the players are used to playing on. So maybe that's why we've seen a little bit more even of a series in the last couple of years, as well as Michigan State becoming a much better program.
Yeah, and going at this game, there's going to be some keys to this game that we'll be looking out for. And Brian, we're going to present B-Rex keys to the game. We know that these are big for any team that wants to pull up a big victory to their season. We'll start with the Gophers. Michigan State so good at home this season, but Minnesota still one of the best teams in college hockey. If they are to get it done here in game number 1, how do they?
Well, I think for starters, you have to get Jimmy Snuggerud in space. He is somebody who has been prolific in the scoring column, not only in goals, but assists as well. 15 and 18 respectively. So get him some easy shots, get Michigan State's defense out of the way, clearing some room, and let him go. And then it's Brody Zemer and Brody Lamb as well, who were controlling 5 of the 6 goals, as we had touched on earlier in the recent series back in December. They need to get in the scorebook. And then as well, keep the penalties low. For Minnesota, they're at 74.4% on the penalty kill, which is 56th best in the country. You need to keep your penalties low, keep Michigan State out of the extra man advantage.
And Minnesota will try to do that, but they will have a tough task here tonight. They will be going up against Michigan State back at home at Munn Ice Arena. If the Spartans are to take game number 1, B-Rec, how do they do it?
Well, it's starting on time. Carson Dorwart said that with this group, there's never any panic. They have to be able to get and overcome a slow start if it may happen. They've done it quite a few times. Leadership without Red Savage. We talked about how he would be out once more. It's who steps up. You mentioned, Yusuf, that it would be Nick Andrews as well, Matt Basgul, Tiernan Shouty, Carson Dorwart, and then convert on the power play. Basgul is 9th in the conference with 3 power play goals. Can he get one tonight? If he can, I would love it.
Well, you laid out the keys, and now we'll take in that information and try to make our predictions. Now, you've seen us before here on the Big Ten Plus pregame show. We've used props to say our predictions. We've used photos, drawings, but now we have something a little bit different. We have to make it unique, right? So we talked earlier this week, and how about poetry? Let's get those snaps in, right? And let's hear our best poetic skills on who we think will win tonight's game. So B-Rec, You laid out the keys. I want to hear your poem first.
Let me tell you something. When you mentioned to me that we would be using a haiku to pick this squad, I said yes. How can we do this best? So I went into the treasure trove and I found the Wall Street Bull.
What?
Because I'm feeling bullish on Michigan State. And you may be asking why. Well, folks, I'll tell you why. It's because a little man in Tom Izzo told me that, well, here I am on the ice watching the Spartans. Oh, they're playing so nice. They're skating so fast, like a pro on a green. Minnesota's dreams just so unseen. They're fast like a squirrel chasing a nut, leaving the dreams of Skyuma punched in the gut. Be the puck, I say, with a wink, as the Spartans make the Gophers rethink. Minnesota tried, but they did not last. The Spartans took over skating so fast. I think Michigan State is going to figure out a way to plant the flag here at Munn Ice Arena and come out with a victory. Let's go.
He's got.
Can I just say for a second, the bull is
Yeah, the bull is shattered on the ground here. Feeling
Sorry.
bullish, and then it
was
just
going to
dies.
happen after dropping it. I looked down 2 seconds after it just in pieces down.
Brian, I swear your suit is like a magical toolbox. You're just pulling out random things. I'm expecting like a broom now because you might predict a sweep. Yeah, there it is, the broken bull on the screen. Well, that's going to be hard to follow up, but you know, I'm going to try. So here is my poetry. In East Lansing, the battle is set. Minnesota is hungry. They won't forget. Ranked number 4, they've come to play to avenge the loss of Saturday. MSU ranked number 2, but the Gophers know what they must do. Game 1's the time to make their stand, take down the Spartans, and seize command. The stage is set. The puck will drop. Minnesota's charge cannot be stopped. To beat the Spartans, they'll make it clear. This is the moment. The time is here. Give me Minnesota. I think if any time you're going to strike against Michigan State, it is in game number 1. Spartans are a lot better in game number 2. And Minnesota, they almost had game 1 of the last series when they played in December. So I like the Gophers here.
I mean, I guess that makes me, but I'm not going to lie. There's absolutely zero chance I can follow those 2 performances. You know, I've given some rhyming a chance in the past, but it's just not for me. So I'm just going to go with an outright Michigan State pick. I think they're going to get the job here done.
Well, I guess we have to pick a winner for that. Maybe Brian. I mean, maybe you might see in the next 150 years that 10th grade English classes will start to analyze Brian's pick to game number 1 between Minnesota and Michigan State. We'll see. Do we think Edgar Allan Poe is shaking in his boots after hearing these?
I think so, absolutely. I think that this is challenging the greatest poets of all time right here, this trio that we just laid out.
All right, so we got Michigan State, Minnesota. What we're trying to say is this can go any way, and it should be a fun one as the Gophers take the ice here in East Lansing. Yusuf, we know that this game is going to be tight. I want to hear your final thoughts.
You know, just like you said, it's going to be tight. Both of these teams are so good at defense and so good at offense, so you don't know, is it going to be a high-scoring game or is it going to be a one-goal game with, you know, not many goals getting past these 2 talented goaltenders? Should be very interesting to see how it turns out.
Well, the first piece of the puzzle is going to come together on the weekend. Number 4, Minnesota, and number 2, Michigan State. Puck drop is just around the corner right here on Big Ten Plus. 20 minutes in the books in this historic top 5 matchup for control of the Big Ten Conference. Number 2, Michigan State leads number 4, Minnesota 1-0 after the first 20. Tanner Kelly getting the Spartans on the board, Brian, and Michigan State taking a 1-0 lead into the intermission.
Yes, and for 26 Kelly, it was his 4th goal of the season, and I feel like that line of Manisto, Shouty, and Kelly is exactly what Michigan State needed and the absolute jump in that first period.
Well, something to note, bad news for Minnesota, good news for Michigan State. When the Spartans score first, they are 14-1 on the season. Good sign for Michigan State to get on the board early. And for Minnesota, they're really a first period team. they have to feel a little bad not scoring there in the first. Remember on Friday against Notre Dame, they won that game 5-2, but all 5 goals came in the first period.
Absolutely. And it truly feels like there was a paradigm shift at about the 14-minute mark. Take a look here at the shots on goal for Michigan State, creating, as you see there, a wide room. Here as well, they just keep driving, bodies on net, making sure the net is covered. Airy was having trouble visualizing where it was at. Dolwart rips one there. That time it's straight into the barrel of the chest. That's a tough angle to score from. But then it's the toe drag right there that sneaks by for Tanner Kelly. That thing was just phenomenal. Watch how it's sent in there. A nice chip on for Michigan State. They've had such different kind of ways of getting to the net that I've appreciated.
Yeah, and besides the 2 power plays, it seems like Minnesota was not able to get a lot of offense going. Michigan State, on the other hand, didn't have any power plays and still put the pressure on the Gophers. Let's take a look at the first period stats. Michigan State out shooting the Gophers by 4, even though Minnesota had 2 power plays there. And for the Gophers, you had 2 chances, 4 minutes with a man advantage, coming up empty. They have to figure that out here in the second.
Well, and it's so important. We mentioned that Michigan State, or rather Minnesota, had to play a clean game. They did just that, and they were able to get out without allowing a power play.
Well, we know in this game that there is a lot of stars, and one is the nation's leading goal scorer. That is Mr. Isaac Howard. He has 18 goals on the season for Michigan State. That leads the Big Ten, and that leads the country. But is it as good as the legend of Mike Donnelly? He scored 59 goals way back in 1986. Way back then, you were listening to music cassette tapes, playing with your Cabbage Patch Kids, and watching Mike Donnelly score 1.34 goals per night. What a legend. When my parents say that hockey was just different in the 80s, I guess they were right.
I suppose they were. Look at that right there. That look at the way he just flicks that thing from the backhand outside the circle. I mean, these are things, it's like, as I'm looking at it now, I'm seeing Steph Curry. I really am.
And Mike Donnelly, his single season record was 59 goals. That is the most ever in college hockey history. You want to know how much that is more than second place? 14 goals. Second place had 45. It's not even close, Brian.
No.
How does this happen? I guess that's a different era of hockey, but I guess that puts in perspective. Let's take a look. Mike Donnelly played for Michigan State. That was the historic season, 1985 to 86, 59 goals. Now Isaac Howard, he isn't done with his season yet. Maybe he can still try to get to 59, but I don't know how likely that is. But just, I mean, that is unbelievable. That is 2 different worlds of hockey right there, Brian.
Yes, it is. And it's also worth noting that that was a championship year prior to 2007. So you wonder what an output like this on the offensive end truly means for Michigan State.
Yeah, and Isaac Howard has 18. That leads the nation. But Jimmy Snuggerud has 15. That's 3rd in the country. So Minnesota also has someone, I guess, looking for that record. But, I mean, when you talk about unbreakable records, I don't know if that's going to be touched.
No, it certainly won't, at least for now, I believe. A lot of the problem with that is simply playing more games at that time than you would have in a year like this one. So where we'll see Michigan State only top out at about 30, it would have been like 45 or 50 games at that point.
And that was back in 1986, and you saw in some of those highlights, Michigan State was playing Minnesota, but this is a series that dates all the way back to 1923. What a series this has been. Minnesota leads the all-time series 136 to 52 to 18. That's a .704 win percentage against the Spartans. The Gophers have just really owned Michigan State since the 1920s, but Spartans have a good program here, maybe trying to cut back into that, but Minnesota still leads by a ton in this very historic series.
No, they certainly do. And, you know, it's one of these questions, right? As you see there, 136, 51, and 18. as you said so many times, 5 of 6 points starting to turn the tide, and you can sense that the rivalry is becoming more than it ever had.
Yeah, and you can see there on the bottom of your screen, Michigan State's second most played rivalry behind Michigan. This just goes back into history, dating all the way back to January 1922. Fellas, that is over 100 years ago. And look at this. This is some movie magic, I guess some game magic. Yusuf Anaya, our sideline reporter, joining us, and we needed to talk this series history because we got to put in perspective how old this series is. We've done it before. We're going to bring back the classic game. We have to name whether this item, its invention, its history, its start, and introduction to the world is older or younger than the first date played between Minnesota and Michigan State college hockey. So I guess I'll leave it up to you guys. Who wants to start first in this one?
I'd like to go first. Last time I went second, I think that was a little bit of a disadvantage. I'd like to go first this time.
Okay, well, Yusuf, you are on the chopping block. Here we go. First invention, the cheeseburger. Was that invented before January 1922 or after? Could the fellas, after winning a college hockey game, enjoy a cheeseburger to celebrate?
That's good. That's a good, that one really makes me sit and think for a little. I know we don't have too much time, so I have to come to my decision quickly. I'm going to think a cheeseburger would have to be older than 100 years old. I mean, my late grandpa would be nearing 93 right now, so I think, just basing it off that, I would like to think a cheeseburger is older.
Well, Ryan, I wouldn't let you off the hook. We got one more for you. And, I got to tell you the answer. Yeah, sorry. What was your prediction again, Yusuf?
It was older. The cheeseburger's older than 100 years old.
The cheeseburger is older.
Okay.
1926 is when it was invented. So the first game between Minnesota and Michigan State, you could not enjoy a cheeseburger after. Fun fact. Here we go. Second question. This is for you, Brian. The Band-Aid. We know that it got physical, especially back in the 1920s. If maybe they got a little boo-boo, could they use a Band-Aid to patch that up?
I don't think so.
So you are saying that is older?
Yes.
Actually, it is younger, 1920. So if there was an injury, we had Band-Aids on staff, but I mean, that's just 2 years younger, guys. That just puts in perspective how old this is, and this rivalry is just very historic. It is very talented, and it shows that we have two of the best teams in college hockey, and right now, they are just on top of the mountain right now because they are some of the best in college hockey right now. Take a look at those stats. I see a lot of first and seconds there, Yusuf.
Yeah, 100%. That means you're looking at two of the best coaches in the country. I mean, the Big Ten has been known for its talent up and down for years, but now Michigan State, since 2007, since a long time, is starting to come back into that really relevant role in the Big Ten, starting to scare some of the other programs and show why they why they deserve a spot at the top.
And whether Michigan State or Minnesota wins the Big Ten, we know that they definitely deserve it based on those stats. And to climb up to the Big Ten, you have to be good in really all assets of your game.
Yes, you do. And I think that's what these teams have both found great success in, is being able to have a forecheck, have a back check, have two goaltenders that are interchangeable. And I think that's exactly why we find ourselves at 1 and 2.
Yeah, if you talk to both coaches on this team, one of the things they both emphasize is the depth. And you don't get depth unless you have players, talented players, wanting to come and play for your program in droves. So that's what these two programs are dealing with, and that's what you get when you have such talented coaching staffs.
Well, these are two of the most talented teams in the country. As we said before, a top 5 matchup. Winner gets first place in the Big Ten for the moment. Game 1 between Minnesota and Michigan State. Second period coming your way. Spartans lead 1-0. Can the Gophers come back and make it a game? We'll see next on Big Ten Plus. Welcome back to Munn Ice Arena, the Big Ten Plus intermission show, part number 2, 40 minutes in the books. I'm Jacob Maurer, alongside Brian Rector, as we welcome you in back for this top 5 matchup in which we've played 2 periods. And Brian, that second period, holy cow, 7 goals in that 20-minute span. Unbelievable.
You talk about living up to the hype. That's exactly what this thing has done. You know, Jacob, I was seconds away from writing out on my little keyboard, it's time to pull Eri. They did, right on cue. And now it'll be a question of what breaks here in this third period. We were talking about it in the break. A 2-goal lead, never safe.
And Oliver Moore got it started for Minnesota. They tied it up, but then Michigan State just kept on responding. Tommy Ministo, his second of the season, just a minute and 41 seconds into the second. And then Brody Zemer scores for Minnesota. We're back tied at 2. Then David Gucciardi, less than a minute later, puts the Spartans back up in front near the blue line. And David Gucciardi, he would not be done for Michigan State. But first, Danny Russell, first power play of the period for Michigan State. Danny Russell, number 20, puts in his 11th for the Spartans. And then David Gucciardi finds himself in the right place at the right time for goal number 3 on the season. Michigan State puts up 5 on the Gophers, and it was just a frenzy of goals for Michigan State. Nathan Ari had to be pulled out of the game for Minnesota. Just unbelievable for Michigan State.
What I loved the most was speaking about David Gucciardi. He not only had a slap shot from the point, but then he crashed the net, got traffic in front, and Michigan State found various unique ways to score. I love that.
Well, we got 8 goals in this game, and you might think, where are the goaltenders? Well, there's still tons of goals and saves by the goalies. Trey Augustine and Nathan Airy had to be pulled away. Liam Soublier had to replace him, but they still facing the top 2 offenses in the Big Ten. They had their work cut out for them here tonight. And even though it's 8 goals, some will say that's good enough considering how good these attacks are.
Well, and it's funny, both of these schools combined score about 4 goals a game, which equates to 8 total. We're on that number, and we still have 20 minutes to go, plus any extra we may have. So the output has been really high, and I think both these schools, both these squads are buzzing right now. You look at the face-off win rate for Michigan State, 31-12. Minnesota giving up the body a little bit more than the green and white to this point, but Michigan State continuing to lead in the shots category. But I think it starts when you gain that possession, when you can pitch it back into your D zone, recenter, or if you're in the offensive zone, keep the possession going. Michigan State, 31 faceoffs. They need to keep that number high going into this third.
And look at the shots. Michigan State projected for 44 shots on the night. Minnesota is going to have to do a better job at stopping this Michigan State attack. And, of course, Michigan State getting their first power play opportunity. That's been a struggle for the Gophers. They ranked dead last in the Big Ten in penalty kill. Michigan State 5th in the Big Ten. Not like a powerhouse, but they definitely took advantage.
That's right. And we mentioned early and often that Minnesota would need to play a cleaner game and keep their athletes out of the box. They've been able to do it, but they were penalized. That one time they went into the box, Michigan State figured out a way to get it beyond that red line, score that goal.
Well, Spartans were up 5-2 in this one, but Minnesota got it back to the most dangerous lead in all of hockey, and they did it behind their captain, Jimmy Snuggerud, scoring his 16th goal of the season. And we mentioned him with Isaac Howard. And look at those stats coming into tonight. Snuggerud, of course, getting one more point, so he's at 34. Howard still hasn't recorded a point for Michigan State in this game, despite them having 5 goals. But we are seeing 2 of the best skating forwards in the country right now.
That's right, and Howard is close. You get the sense that he's driving to that net, creating opportunities for others. You know that he is stressing and waning to get to that point. That being said, it hasn't happened yet. I look for the fact that it will break going into this third period.
Well, they always say, Brian, the most dangerous lead in hockey is 2 goals. And right now, Michigan State has a 2-goal advantage, but if anyone is able to come back, it is Minnesota. They have the first-ranked offense in the country, and they can definitely get it done. They scored 3 goals in that second period. What's 3 more? You'll have the lead.
Man, that's exactly right. And I think it starts with you win the battles in the neutral zone, and you pursue that puck deep into the corner on the offensive side. You have to start to win some more faceoffs, and then we'll see kind of how it breaks from then on. But Michigan State knows what it's like to flip the script. They now need to keep control, keep their foot down as we head on.
Well, if Minnesota is going to come back in this game, as we mentioned, down by 2,
Yeah.
they're going to have to do a lot of things right. Let's
Yeah.
transition into, again, B-Rex keys to the game. We want to know, how can Minnesota close this game out and try to get 3 points here in game number 1?
So it's funny, anecdotally speaking, I was typing out the fact that Minnesota should pull Erie right when they did. Now that they have, the question is, does Michigan State struggle to get shots behind the netminder now in Juliere? High volume shots for Minnesota, keep that thing on net, traffic at the net front, and then try and win some more faceoffs, get your possession going.
And Liam Solier in the net for the Gophers. Hasn't let up a goal when he got replaced. But if you're Michigan State, you're up by 2. You have to think you might want to get one more past him and just to be extra safe. So if the Spartans, if they're able to take 3 points in game number 1 and are able to close this out, what will they have to do in the third?
Well, it's continuing to play hard, right? I think Michigan State has to simplify their passing game, keep winning that face-off circle, and I feel that this is most important, folks. Use all of the offensive zone that you have. We talk about when you gain entry past the blue line, how deep do you go? I would love to see Michigan State play beyond the goaltender in Souliere and make him move laterally and make him guess at which post Michigan State is going to attack first.
Well, some good news for Michigan State. When they lead after 2 periods on the season, they are 12-0-2. Now, let's take it back. Last Friday against Michigan, Michigan State was up after the second, and they ended up losing in overtime. So, I mean, you could see where Michigan State could struggle against Minnesota, especially considering how good they are, but that's a bad number if you're the Gophers.
It's certainly not good, and especially we talked about the amount of time that's been played at home, few times in the last stretch of weeks for Michigan State, but they're back home behind this crowd that's giving us certainly a show. And wow, we'll see how this next 20 unfolds.
Well, 20 minutes to go in this top 5 matchup. Number 4 Minnesota drills number 2 Michigan State 5-3 after 40. We'll see what the next 20 minutes have to unpack. Stay right here on Big Ten Plus. Well, first place in the Big Ten still belongs to Michigan State. They build their lead in the Big Ten standings by 4 points, and they get magic win number 20. Michigan State now 23-2 on the season, and holy cow, Brian, 9-3. That score doesn't even feel real.
No, it doesn't. In fact, I believe that that's the highest goal total Michigan State has had in ages, but absolutely the highest in the Big Ten ever.
And Minnesota, the most goals they allowed before this game this season is 5. But now they let up 9, and a big part of that was Isaac Howard, and he's with our sideline reporter, Yusuf Anaya.
Yeah, welcome back inside Munn Ice Arena. I'm here standing alongside the Iceman, Isaac Howard, where Michigan State just completed a big 9-3 victory against one of the best teams in the country, Minnesota. Isaac, I know you came over from Minnesota Duluth before joining the Spartans. How does it feel having this success against your former in-state rival?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. Like, these are big-time points, big-time games, and, we came out, we played a full 60. It's unreal to get these wins, and, it's definitely fun being like that's basically my hometown, so.
Yeah. Your 19th and 20th goal of the year. You're leading the entire country. I mean, I know you've always had the confidence and belief in yourself, but what has really led to this level of production this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just took a step over summer trying to better myself, and I'm blessed to have a couple of great line mates, Stramel and Russell. Those guys are always finding me, and I'm always finding them, and it's working.
100%, and obviously job's not finished. You got to go out and get the sweep tomorrow night. What is the key to that for you guys?
Yeah, I think just reset the clock, go to bed, get some good sleep, come out, same energy, let's go, let's be flying.
Appreciate you, Isaac.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Yeah, up to you guys for the rest of this post-game show.
It's Yusuf. Thank you so much, Yusuf. And Isaac Howard getting goals 19 and 20. Michigan State getting win number 20. Isaac Howard getting goal number 20. That leads the nation, as Yusuf said, and he was just outstanding, as well as all his Spartan teammates in this one.
No, I think the thing that struck me the most about what he said is that they're looking at taking one incremental step forward. That's what tonight was. Michigan State just continuing to play smart, fast, and hard. They'll get some rest, and they'll get back to it. I love the way that they're able to stay present and engaged in the here and now.
Well, it couldn't be a Big Ten game without some physical play, and this game showed a lot of it. Both teams knew they needed this game, but Michigan State using that home crowd, we mentioned so good at Munn Ice Arena. They get their 9th straight win at home this season. Spartans are just rolling. They use that physical play. They're going to have to rest. Both teams will, because they'll be right back at it tomorrow night.
Well, it's called the nitty-gritty for a reason, right? These two teams, it's evident that they have respect for each other mutually, but anytime you're competing for the eyes of the country, you need to leave it all out there on that ice. And I do believe that's what they did. You look at Lamb, they're tying it up with Tyson Geary. It's just, the chippiness is really something else.
And outstanding for Michigan State was their goaltender. Let 0 goals up in the first and 0 in the third. He was really a brick wall for Minnesota. Any chance they had to try to come back into this game, they had to face off against Trey Augustine, and he continued to shine.
Well, and Minnesota was outshot, but that's not to say they didn't have a great number of opportunities. They were able to get it down in deep against Augustine a few times, muck it up in front of the net, but he maintained his composure, and it's exactly what we've come to know and love regarding him in between the pipes.
Yeah, and he was just outstanding for Michigan State. Of course, the Spartans out-shooting Minnesota by a lot in this one, and that's kind of how you get those goals to unpack here. Minnesota only had one shot on goal the first 10 minutes of the third period. As we take a look at our final stats, Michigan State out-shooting the Gophers by 12. Spartans taking advantage of one of their 2 power plays. But what stands out to me, Brian, is those face-offs.
Most certainly, and that and the struggle on the power play for the Golden Gophers. That was the other thing. You get 3 chances at it. You have to put at least a puck into the net, at least one. That being said, you are right, 44-20 in face-offs. Wow. I mean, it's been a slew of Spartans who have been able to do that well from whichever circle they're in, whether it's in the offensive zone or the defensive zone. And if they can do it tomorrow and begin with that possession and create these transition opportunities and odd man rushes, they're in good shape once more.
And they will face off tomorrow night. That will be on Big Ten Network. But our next broadcast on Big Ten Plus will be men's wrestling on Sunday at 1 p.m. against number 7 Nebraska. But first, game 2 of this series. How does Minnesota bounce back? And most importantly, what goaltender do they go with?
Well, you just asked the million-dollar question. And you have a grave concern between Soulier and Airy. We'll see who they go with. They both split the work in terms of time on the ice, and they both just about split the work in terms of goals allowed. So we'll see what happens. I tend to believe they'll revert back to Airy, but we'll see what happens here.
And we'll see for sure. Game 2 will be big. Can Minnesota climb back into these Big Ten standings? But Michigan State in Game 1 was just dominant. They win it 9-3 over number 4 Minnesota and take a 4-point lead into the Big Ten standings. Well, some thank yous need to go out to our executive producer, Matt McCullough, our producer, Jack Stager, our director, Jason Laplow, as well as the people here helping us with the studio shows, Elisa Ginter, Jack Whitwer on camera, as well as our studio producer, Kyle Keegan. I'm Jacob Maurer, alongside Brian Rector. This one was a fun one, a flurry of goals in this one, Brian. Michigan State takes it.